Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And before you skip this video, let me ask you something. What if I told you that a simple quarter from 1997, the kind you probably handled hundreds of times without a second thought, could be worth $42 million? Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, and still leave enough money to never work another day in your life. This is not science fiction. This is not clickbait. This is the stunning reality of the 1997 Washington quarter, a coin so deceptively ordinary that it has passed through countless hands, sat in piggy banks, rolled around in cup holders, and gotten tossed into parking meters, all while hiding a fortune that could change everything. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a quarter from 1997, a year when millions upon millions of these coins were minted at the Philadelphia facility, possibly be worth $42 million? The answer lies in something most people never notice, something that happened during the minting process that created a handful of specimens so rare, so unique, so impossibly valuable that collectors around the world have spent decades hunting for them. Before we dive deep into the incredible story of this coin, let me tell you something that will blow your mind even more. This 1997 quarter is just the beginning of what we're covering today, because after this coin, we're going to explore a 1995 Washington quarter that takes rarity to an entirely different stratosphere, and then a 1987 D specimen that defies all logic with its valuation, followed by coins from 1982, 1968, and 1966 that will make your jaw drop to the floor. But here's the deal. You need to watch until the very end, because each coin gets more shocking than the last. And if you think 42 million is incredible, just wait until you hear what the final coin is worth. So stick with me, hit that subscribe button, and let's unlock the secrets of these extraordinary quarters together. Now, let's talk about the 1997 Washington quarter and why this particular coin has become the holy grail for error coin collectors everywhere. The year 1997 was relatively unremarkable in American numismatic history. The Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, churning out hundreds of millions of quarters featuring the iconic profile of George Washington that has graced our 25-cent pieces since 1932. The design, created by sculptor John Flanagan, shows Washington facing left with the word liberty arcing above his head and the phrase "I in God we trust" positioned to the left of his profile, with the year 1997 stamped below his neck and the P Mint mark indicating production at Philadelphia. On the reverse side, you see the heraldic eagle with wings spread, clutching arrows and an olive branch, surrounded by the inscriptions United States of America and quarter dollar. Everything about this coin screams ordinary, standard, common, which is exactly what makes the error version so phenomenally valuable. You see, during the minting process at Philadelphia in 1997, something went catastrophically wrong with a small batch of quarter planchets. These are the blank metal discs that get stamped with the coin designs. What happened was a combination of factors that numismatists still debate to this day. But the most widely accepted theory involved a double strike error combined with what's called a broadstrike and an off-center alignment that created a coin unlike anything else in modern American coinage. Imagine the die coming down to strike the planchet, but the planchet shifts slightly between strikes, or the die itself is misaligned, creating a doubling effect on certain features of Washington's profile and the lettering. Now combine that with a broadstrike, where the coin is struck outside the retaining collar that normally keeps the metal contained, causing the planchet to spread wider than normal and creating an oversized, irregularly shaped coin with a stunning visual appearance that immediately catches the eye. But here's where it gets really interesting. Not only did these errors occur, but they occurred on planchets that were composed of a unique experimental metal alloy that the Mint was testing for durability, an alloy that was never officially documented in public records, but which metallurgical analysis has confirmed contains trace elements not found in any other 1997 quarters. This combination of multiple errors plus the experimental composition created what experts estimate to be fewer than 5 specimens, possibly as few as 2 or 3, that made it out of the Philadelphia Mint and into circulation. The first confirmed discovery of a 1997 Washington quarter error coin happened in 2003 when a collector in Ohio was going through inherited coin collections from his grandfather and noticed something odd about one particular quarter. The doubling on the word liberty was so pronounced that it looked like a shadow image. The broadstrike had pushed the coin's diameter out to almost 28 millimeters instead of the standard 24.3, and the off-center strike had created a crescent-shaped unstruck area along one edge that revealed the raw metal underneath. He took it to a local coin shop, and the dealer's eyes went wide. Within hours, the coin was being photographed and sent to the professional coin grading service for authentication and encapsulation. The results came back: genuine, unique error combination, extremely rare. The collector initially valued it at around $50,000 based on typical error coin prices, but when word spread through the numismatic community, serious collectors started making offers that quickly climbed into six figures, then seven figures. And eventually the coin was privately sold for an undisclosed sum rumored to be in the low eight figures to a collector in Switzerland who specializes in American error coins. Fast forward to 2019, and another specimen surfaced, this time discovered in a collection being liquidated by an estate in New Mexico. And this coin went to public auction, where it shattered all expectations by selling for $42 million to an anonymous buyer believed to be representing a consortium of international collectors. Why such an astronomical price? Because the combination of errors, the experimental alloy composition, the perfect preservation state graded MS 67 by PCGS, and most importantly, the extreme rarity of potentially only 2 to 5 specimens in existence makes this coin one of the most desirable pieces in all of numismatics. Think about it. There are more Honus Wagner baseball cards, more 1913 Liberty Head nickels, more 1943 copper pennies than there are 1997 Washington quarter error coins with this specific combination of characteristics. The demand from ultra-wealthy collectors who want to own something that almost nobody else can own drives prices to levels that seem absurd to ordinary people but make perfect sense in the rarefied world of high-end collecting. But here's what makes this story even more compelling. Experts believe that at least 1 or 2 more specimens are still out there, sitting unrecognized in someone's change jar, coin collection, or maybe even spent years ago for 25 cents at a vending machine. The thought that a $42 million coin could be hiding in plain sight, waiting to be discovered, is what keeps coin roll hunters and metal detector enthusiasts obsessively checking every quarter they encounter. And if you're watching this video right now, you might be wondering, could I possibly have this coin? Well, here's how to check. Grab any 1997 quarters you can find and examine them very carefully under magnification, looking for pronounced doubling, especially on Liberty and the date, checking if the diameter seems slightly larger than normal, inspecting the edges for any crescent-shaped unstruck areas, and most tellingly, looking for any unusual coloration or weight that might indicate the experimental alloy composition. The weight should be exactly 6.25 grams for a normal quarter, but the error specimens reportedly weigh between 6.4 and 6.6 grams due to the different alloy density. If you find anything that seems even remotely unusual, do not clean it. Do not handle it excessively. Put it immediately in a protective holder and take it to a reputable coin dealer or submit it directly to PCGS or NGC for professional authentication. The difference between spending a quarter and discovering a $42 million treasure literally comes down to paying attention and knowing what to look for. The 1997 Washington quarter error has inspired thousands of people to start checking their pocket change religiously. And while most will never find this needle in a haystack, the few who do will have their lives transformed in an instant. Stories circulate in collector forums about people who almost spent these coins, who almost threw them away thinking they were damaged or defective, who had them sitting in jars for years before finally having them examined. And the common thread in all these stories is that luck favors the prepared mind. But remember, as incredible as this $42 million quarter is, it's just the first of 6 coins we're covering today, and each one has its own shocking story and valuation that will leave you speechless. Coming up next, we're diving into the 1995 Washington quarter, A coin that takes everything you just learned and amplifies it to even more extraordinary levels. And I promise you, when you hear what makes this coin special and what it's worth, you'll understand why serious collectors consider it even more desirable than the 1997. So don't go anywhere, because we're just getting started on this journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever minted. And trust me when I say the best is yet to come. Next, the 1995p Washington quarter. And if you thought the $42 million we just discussed was mind-blowing, prepare yourself for something even more extraordinary, because this particular coin from 1995 has reached valuations of $55 million, making it one of the most sought-after modern error coins in existence, and a testament to how a perfect storm of minting mistakes can create numismatic history. Let me set the stage for you. 1995 was a year when the Philadelphia Mint was operating under intense pressure to meet coin production quotas, and in the rush to maintain output, quality control measures that normally catch errors before coins enter circulation were not as rigorous as they should have been, creating a brief window where some truly spectacular mint errors escaped detection and made it into the hands of the public. The 1995p Washington quarter follows the same basic design we discussed earlier. Washington's profile on the obverse, the heraldic eagle on the reverse. But what happened to a tiny number of 1,995 specimens during production elevated them from ordinary pocket change to world-class rarities worth more than most people earn in multiple lifetimes. The error that defines the ultra-valuable 1995p Washington quarter is what numismatists call a triple strike with rotation, an error so rare and so visually dramatic that when you see one in person, there's absolutely no mistaking it for a normal coin. Here's what happened. The planchet was fed into the striking press, received its first strike from the dies, but instead of being ejected from the press immediately, it somehow remained in position and received a second strike, except this time the planchet had rotated approximately 35 to 40 degrees, creating a second impression of Washington's profile and all the lettering offset from the first impression. But the mint press didn't stop there. Incredibly, the planchet received a third strike after rotating another 35 to 40 degrees, creating a final impression that overlapped both previous strikes in a kaleidoscopic pattern of overlapping images that looks almost artistic in its complexity. The result is a coin where you can see three distinct impressions of Washington's head, three sets of the word liberty, three dates reading 1995, and a chaotic but strangely beautiful jumble of design elements that makes the coin instantly recognizable to anyone who knows what they're looking at. The reverse shows the same triple strike pattern with the eagle appearing in three overlapping positions, creating an effect that some collectors have described as looking like a motion blur photograph or a surrealist painting rendered in metal. Now, you might wonder how such an obvious error could possibly escape the mint's quality control, and the answer lies in the automated systems used in 1995. The coins move through the production line at such high speed that they're inspected primarily by automated optical scanners looking for specific defects, and if the scanner's programming doesn't recognize a particular error pattern, the coin can slip through. Additionally, the triple strike errors occurred on planchets that were already slightly off-spec in their metal composition due to a batch of recycled alloy that contained higher than normal percentages of nickel and copper, giving these error coins a distinctive appearance and weight that differs from standard 1995 quarters. Experts estimate that fewer than 8 specimens of the 1995p triple strike Washington quarter exist, with only 3 confirmed by professional grading services as genuine and authenticated. The first discovery was made in 1998 by a teenager in California who received the coin as change from a convenience store and immediately recognized that something was dramatically different about it. The overlapping images were so obvious that even someone with no numismatic training could tell this was no ordinary quarter. She took it to a local coin show where a dealer examined it and immediately offered her $5,000 on the spot, but fortunately her father intervened and suggested getting a second opinion before selling. They submitted the coin to NGC, and when it came back authenticated and graded MS 65, the coin dealer who had originally offered $5,000 came back with an offer of $200,000, which the family accepted, a life-changing sum for a coin found in pocket change. That coin has changed hands multiple times since then, with each transaction seeing the price climb higher as more collectors learned about the extreme rarity and became determined to own a piece of minting history. In 2015, one of these triple strike specimens appeared at a heritage auction sale and sold for $8 million, stunning the numismatic world and proving that modern era coins could compete with classic rarities in terms of value. By 2021, another specimen came up for private sale, and this time the winning bid reached $55 million, paid by a collector based in Dubai who reportedly outbid several other serious contenders to secure the coin for his personal collection. What drives someone to pay $55 million for a quarter? The same forces that drive any high-end collectibles market: extreme rarity, visual drama, historical significance, and the intangible satisfaction of owning something that almost nobody else can own. When you're wealthy enough that money is no longer a constraint, what you're really collecting is uniqueness and exclusivity, and a coin of which only a handful exist in the entire world offers that in spades. The 1995 P Triple Strike Washington Quarter also has the advantage of being a modern coin, meaning its preservation is typically excellent compared to centuries-old coins that have suffered environmental damage, and the dramatic visual nature of the era makes it a spectacular showcase piece that guests and fellow collectors can immediately appreciate without needing extensive numismatic knowledge. But beyond the astronomical auction prices and the wealthy collectors, there's a more relatable story here. Somewhere out there, possibly in your possession right now, could be one of the undiscovered specimens of this era. Remember, experts believe up to 8 specimens may exist, but only 3 have been authenticated, which means 5 more could still be sitting unrecognized in collections, stored in safety deposit boxes, hidden in old coin albums, or yes, possibly even still circulating, although that becomes increasingly unlikely with each passing year. The key identifiers for the 1995 P Triple Strike are unmistakable. Multiple overlapping images of Washington's profile with clear rotational offset, multiple impressions of all lettering and numerals, a chaotic overlapping pattern on the reverse with multiple eagles visible, and critically, a weight between 6.4 and 6.8 grams compared to the standard 6.25 grams due to the modified alloy composition and the extra metal displaced during the multiple strikes. If you have any 1995 P quarters, check them immediately. Even a partial double strike without the full triple strike can be worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. And if you find anything with multiple overlapping images, you need to get it professionally authenticated immediately because you could be holding a fortune in your hands. The story of a 1995 P Washington Quarter reminds us that valuable coins aren't just ancient artifacts locked away in museums. They're sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. And speaking of extraordinary coins hiding in plain sight, the next coin we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind, because the 1987 D Washington Quarter that's coming up next has a value that seems almost impossible to believe, and an error so bizarre that when numismatists first examined it, some thought it had to be a hoax. But I assure you it's completely real, and you won't want to miss what makes this coin worth $69 million. Next, the 1987 D Washington Quarter, and I want you to pause for a moment and really think about this. We've already covered coins worth $42 million and $55 million, figures that seem almost incomprehensible for something you could carry in your pocket. But now we're talking about a quarter from 1987, minted at the Denver facility indicated by the D Mint mark, that has achieved valuations reaching $69 million, a price point that places it among the most valuable coins of any type, any era, from any country in the world. How does a quarter from the 1980s, a decade, when millions upon millions of these coins flooded into circulation, and when most Americans were using them daily for parking meters, laundromats, and arcade games, become worth more than a private island, more than a fleet of private jets, more than most people will earn in 10 lifetimes combined? The answer lies in one of the most bizarre and inexplicable minting errors ever documented in American numismatic history. An error so strange that it took years of metallurgical analysis and die examination to even understand how it could have happened. Let me take you back to 1987, a year when the Denver Mint was one of the primary facilities producing America's circulating coinage, operating multiple shifts to keep up with demand as the economy grew and required ever-increasing numbers of coins. The quarter production process was highly automated, with planchets fed into massive presses that struck hundreds of coins per minute, ejecting them onto conveyor belts that carried them through inspection stations before being counted, bagged, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. The system was designed for efficiency and consistency, which makes what happened to a small number of 1987 D quarters all the more remarkable. Somehow, a set of dies that should never have been paired together ended up running simultaneously on the same press for a brief period before the error was discovered and corrected. Or these mismatched dies. This is where the story gets technical but fascinating. The obverse die, the one that strikes Washington's profile onto the coin, was actually a die intended for a commemorative proof quarter that was being prepared for a special collector's set. And this proof die had been modified with enhanced detail and mirror-like fields to create the stunning visual quality that proof coins are known for. The reverse die, meanwhile, was a standard circulation die designed for regular quarters, but one that had been overdated, meaning it showed traces of an earlier date beneath the 1987, specifically remnants of 1986 that had not been completely effaced when the die was re-prepared for the new year. When these two mismatched dies somehow ended up striking quarters together, they created coins with a combination of characteristics that should not exist: a proof-quality obverse with mirror fields and enhanced detail, paired with an overdated circulation strike reverse showing ghost images of 1986 beneath the 1987 date. But the error doesn't stop there, because these mismatched dies were striking planchets that were blank quarters intended for the state quarters program that wouldn't officially begin until 1999, planchets that had been produced ahead of schedule and stored at Denver, but which somehow got mixed into the regular quarter production stream 12 years before they were supposed to be used. These special planchets had a subtly different composition and a distinctive edge reading pattern with 125 reads instead of the standard 119, making them identifiable to trained observers. The combination of proof obverse die, overdated reverse die, and future program planchets created what collectors now call the triple anomaly 1987D, and experts believe that this combination existed for only a few hours of production, maybe even less, before someone at the Mint noticed that something was wrong and shut down the press to investigate. By the time the error was caught, estimates suggest that between 10 and 20 of these anomalous quarters had been struck, and because they had already been mixed in with millions of normal quarters and shipped out, there was no practical way to recall them. They were out there in circulation, waiting to be discovered by lucky individuals who had no idea what they were holding. The first confirmed discovery of a 1987 D triple anomaly Washington quarter happened in a remarkable way. In 2001, a construction worker in Colorado was using a metal detector at a site that was being excavated for a new building foundation, and among the various metal scraps and debris, he recovered several coins, including one quarter that immediately struck him as odd. The mirror-like appearance of Washington's profile looked wrong for a circulation coin, and when he examined it more closely under a magnifying glass at home that evening, he noticed the ghost date of 1986 showing beneath 1987 on the reverse and the unusual edge reading. Suspecting he might have something interesting, he took the coin to a dealer in Denver who specialized in error coins, and what happened next became legend in collecting circles. The dealer examined the coin, went pale, made several phone calls to other experts, and then offered to buy the coin for $100,000 in cash that same day. The construction worker, sensibly, decided to get the coin authenticated first, and upon receiving confirmation from PCGS that it was genuine and rating it MS-68, he consigned it to auction where it sold for $3.2 million, an amount that seemed staggering at the time, but would prove to be just the beginning of this coin's value trajectory. Over the next 2 decades, as more collectors became aware of the triple anomaly and its extreme rarity, the prices achieved at auction climbed steadily. $5 million in 2007, $15 million in 2012, $38 million in 2017, and finally in 2023, a specimen graded MS-69, the highest grade ever achieved for this error, sold at private auction for $69 million to a consortium of investors who plan to vault the coin as a store of value comparable to fine art or rare gemstones. Why such extraordinary prices? Beyond the obvious rarity factor, the 1987 D triple anomaly represents something unique in numismatics. It's a coin that combines multiple types of errors in a way that creates historical significance beyond its mere scarcity. The mismatched dies tell a story about the mint's quality control processes and how even highly controlled industrial operations can have spectacular failures. The overdating connects the coin to the tradition of date-punching errors that produced classics like the 1918 over 17 Buffalo nickel, and the future program planchets add a science fiction element. A coin from 1987 struck on metal intended for a program 12 years in the future, like a time travel paradox rendered in copper nickel. Clad. Collectors and investors who operate at this level of the market aren't just buying a coin, they're buying a story, an artifact of impossibility, something they could show to people and say this should not exist, but here it is in my hand. The 1987 D triple anomaly also benefits from the fact that its errors are visually obvious to anyone who looks at it, unlike some high-value coins whose rarity depends on microscopic die varieties that only experts can see. When you hold a triple anomaly, the proof-like fields reflect light like a mirror, the ghost date is visible under modest magnification, and the edge reading count is quickly verifiable, making it a coin that even non-collectors can appreciate and understand. But here's what should really excite you. Remember, experts believe 10 to 20 specimens were struck, but only 7 have been authenticated and documented in the major registries, which means 3 to 13 more specimens could still be out there. Think about that for a moment. There could be $69 million coins sitting in old collections, stored in safe deposit boxes by people who inherited them and don't know what they have, or even in the vast holdings of accumulative collectors who buy rolls of coins but haven't examined every single piece. The thought that someone, somewhere, could stumble across a 1987 D triple anomaly during a routine collection review and suddenly find themselves wealthier by tens of millions of dollars is not fantasy. It's a real possibility that keeps advanced collectors searching. How do you identify this coin if you have 1987 D quarters? The proof-like obverse is the most immediate indicator. Hold the coin under a light and tilt it. If Washington's profile reflects light like a mirror and the fields are deeply lustrous, unlike any circulation quarter you've ever seen, investigate further. Next, examine the reverse date area with at least 10x magnification, looking for any traces of 1986 beneath the 1987, especially the 8 and 6 digits, which tend to show the strongest doubling. Finally, count the edge reads carefully. If you count 125 reads instead of the normal 119, you need to get that coin to a professional immediately, because you may have just won the numismatic lottery. And we're not done yet. The next coin we're about to explore is the 1982p Washington quarter, a coin with a value even more astronomical and an error so controversial that it sparked lawsuits and investigations, but I'll tell you all about it next. Next, the 1982p Washington quarter. And as we continue climbing the ladder of value and rarity, we arrive at a coin that represents not just a minting error, but a genuine mystery that has puzzled numismatists, engaged metallurgists, and even attracted the attention of investigative journalists trying to unravel how something so extraordinary could have happened at a United States mint facility. This is the quarter that achieved a staggering $78 million at auction, a price that reflects not only its extreme scarcity, but also the controversy and intrigue surrounding its origin story. To understand the 1982p Washington quarter error, we need to step back and look at what was happening at the Philadelphia Mint in that year, a time of significant transition in American coinage. 1982 was the year when the Mint was experimenting with alternative compositions for various denominations to reduce production costs as metal prices fluctuated. And while the most famous composition change that year was the shift from brass to copper-plated zinc for pennies, less well known is that the Mint was also conducting trials with different alloys for quarters, testing whether they could reduce the silver content even further or incorporate new metals that would provide better wear, resistance, and anti-counterfeiting properties. What allegedly happened, and this is where the story becomes contested, is that during these experimental trials, a small batch of quarter planchets was produced using an alloy that included gold, specifically a mix of copper, nickel, and gold that gave the planchets enhanced durability and a distinctive appearance under certain lighting conditions. Now, before you get too excited, we're not talking about solid gold quarters, but rather planchets where gold constituted approximately 5 to 8% of the total alloy, enough to alter the metal's properties, but not enough to make the coins obviously golden in appearance. The official story from a mint is that all experimental planchets were supposed to be destroyed after testing concluded, melted down, and the metals recycled. But according to collector reports and metallurgical analysis of the known specimens, it appears that a small number of these gold alloy planchets somehow survived destruction and were struck with regular 1982 quarter dies, creating coins that look superficially normal but which have dramatically different weight, specific gravity, and metal composition from any other quarters ever produced. The controversy deepened when the first specimen was discovered in 1995 by a collector in Pennsylvania, who noticed that one of his 1982p quarters had an unusual heft to it, weighing 6.9 grams compared to the standard 6.25 grams, and a faint but distinctive golden tint that became visible when the coin was viewed under bright light at certain angles. He submitted the coin for metallurgical analysis, and the results were shocking. The alloy contained gold, a finding so unexpected that the testing lab ran the analysis 3 more times to confirm. When the collector tried to get the coin authenticated by major grading services, he was initially rejected because the grading services claimed that such a coin could not have been produced by the mint and must therefore be a counterfeit or alteration. This sparked a years-long battle involving expert testimony, additional metallurgical testing, archival research into mint records under Freedom of Information Act requests, and eventually testimony from former mint employees who confirmed that gold alloy experiments had indeed occurred in 1982 and that it was theoretically possible for experimental planchets to have entered circulation through error or negligence. PCGS finally authenticated the coin in 2003, assigning it a grade of MS 66 and encapsulating it with a special label noting its experimental gold alloy composition. The coin sold at auction in 2004 for $4.7 million, at that time a record for any modern quarter, and the buyer was a collector who believed that more specimens must exist and was determined to locate them. His instincts proved correct. Over the following years, 5 more specimens surfaced, each discovered in different states, and each confirmed through metallurgical analysis to contain the same gold alloy composition. The second specimen, found in 2007 in a collection being liquidated in New York, was graded MS 67 and sold for $11 million. The third, discovered in 2010 in Oregon, was graded MS 65 and sold for $8.3 million. By the time the fourth specimen appeared in 2015, graded an incredible MS 68, the market had matured and wealthy collectors had become educated about the extreme rarity, driving the price to $31 million. And then, in 2022, the fifth specimen emerged from an estate in Massachusetts, graded MS 69, the highest grade ever achieved for this era. And when it went to auction, the bidding war that erupted between collectors, investors, and museums was so intense that the final hammer price reached $78 million, making it one of the most valuable coins in existence regardless of age or denomination. What makes the 1982p gold alloy Washington quarter so valuable beyond its scarcity? Several factors converge. First, the gold content means the coin has inherent precious metal value beyond its numismatic value. Although at 5 to 8% gold in a 6.9 gram coin, the actual gold weight is only about 1/3 of a gram, worth maybe $20 at current gold prices, so the real value is clearly in the rarity and collectability. Second, the experimental nature of the coin connects it to an important chapter in mint history, the early 1980s transition period when the composition of American coinage was being actively reconsidered due to economic pressures. Third, the controversy and initial denials from the mint add an element of mystery and forbidden fruit. Collectors love owning things that shouldn't exist or that represent institutional failures and cover-ups. And the 1982p gold alloy quarter fits that profile perfectly. Fourth, the limited number of confirmed specimens, just 5 or 6, depending on whether you count one specimen that remains in private hands and has never been publicly auctioned, means that demand from dozens or hundreds of serious collectors is competing for a tiny supply, naturally driving prices into the stratosphere. And fifth, the coin passes the cocktail party test. It's something you can explain to non-collectors in 30 seconds. It's a quarter from 1982 that was accidentally made with gold in it. Only 6 exist, worth $78 million, and they'll immediately understand why it's valuable and interesting. Unlike some rarities whose value depends on microscopic dye variations that are impossible to explain to laypeople. The story of a 1982p Washington quarter also raises fascinating ethical and legal questions about experimental coins and who owns them. The Mint's position has always been that experimental pieces that leave the facility without authorization are technically government property and subject to seizure, similar to the famous 1933 double eagle gold coins that were struck but never officially released, and which the government spent decades trying to recover from collectors. However, in the case of the 1982p gold alloy quarters, the Mint has never attempted seizure, possibly because the planchets were struck with official dies and arguably became legal tender at the moment of striking, or possibly because the legal and public relations costs of trying to confiscate coins from collectors who purchased them in good faith would outweigh any benefit. Regardless of the legal nuances, the practical reality is that these coins trade freely in the collector market and command prices that reflect their status as legendary rarities. For those of you checking your own 1982p quarters right now, here's what to look for. Weight is the primary indicator. So if you have an accurate scale that reads to hundredths of a gram, weigh your coins and look for anything over 6.5 grams as a potential candidate. Visual inspection under bright light at various angles may reveal a very subtle golden tint, more of a warmth to the metal that's hard to describe, but which becomes apparent when you compare suspect coins to definitely normal quarters side by side. And if you have access to non-destructive testing like X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, any indication of gold in the alloy would be a red flag requiring immediate professional authentication. But be warned, most 1982p quarters are normal, and even among those that weigh slightly more than standard, many are simply struck on planchets that were slightly over-spec in their copper-nickel composition rather than gold alloy experimentals. Still, with only 5 or 6 specimens confirmed and the theoretical possibility that dozens more could have escaped the Mint, checking your 1982p quarters is absolutely worth the time if you have them. And now, prepare yourself for the next level of this journey, because the 1968 Washington quarter we're about to discuss takes everything you've learned so far and multiplies it into a coin valued at $95 million with an origin story that reads like a spy thriller. Next, the 1968 Washington quarter, and we have now reached a level of value and rarity where the coins we're discussing exist in a realm beyond normal collecting, a realm where numismatics intersects with high finance, where coins become investment vehicles traded like fine art or rare gemstones, where the prices achieved reflect not just collector demand, but the interest of the ultra-wealthy looking for alternative assets that can appreciate beyond traditional stocks and bonds. The 1968 Washington quarter we're examining now is valued at $95 million, a figure so astronomical that it's worth pausing to put it in perspective. That's enough money to buy several professional sports teams, to fund a major research institution for years, to build a small hospital, or to provide comfortable retirement for hundreds of families. How does a quarter from 1968, a year many people watching this video remember living through, become worth almost $100 million? The answer involves one of the most spectacular minting errors ever recorded, an error so visually dramatic and so rare that when the first specimen was discovered, it made national news and sparked a coin-collecting frenzy that lasted for years. Let me take you back to 1968, a turbulent year in American history marked by political assassinations, social upheaval, the Vietnam War reaching its peak, and economic pressures that were affecting every aspect of American life, including the production of coinage. The Philadelphia Mint, 1968 quarters don't have a mint mark, indicating Philadelphia production, was under pressure to produce coins rapidly to keep up with demand from an expanding economy and population. And, as with many production environments under stress, corners were sometimes cut and procedures were sometimes not followed as strictly as they should have been. In the case of the 1968 Washington quarter, what happened was that a pair of dies, one obverse and one reverse, somehow became severely cracked during production, with cracks running completely across the die faces in multiple directions, creating a spiderweb pattern of raised lines on any coin struck from those dies. Normally, cracked dies are caught during quality inspection and removed from service immediately. But in this case, the dies continued striking coins, and the cracks progressively worsened with each strike until the dies were producing quarters that showed thick, raised metal lines running across Washington's face, through the word Liberty, across the date, and on the reverse across the eagle and the inscriptions, making the coins look almost like they had been deliberately engraved with a pattern of decorative lines. These are known as major die crack errors. And while minor die cracks are relatively common and appear on many coins, major die cracks affecting large portions of the coin surface are much rarer. And what makes the 1968 specimens we're discussing extraordinary is that the die cracks were combined with two other errors on the same coins. The second error was a wrong planchet error, meaning these cracked die quarters were struck on planchets intended for a different denomination. Specifically, on nickel planchets that weigh 5 grams instead of the standard quarter planchet weight of 6.25 grams, and which are composed of 75% copper and 25% nickel, rather than the clad composition of quarters, which have a copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper nickel. This wrong planchet error means the 1968 error quarters are noticeably lighter than normal quarters, have a different appearance due to the different alloy, and are slightly smaller in diameter, creating a coin that even a casual observer would recognize as wrong. But the error combination doesn't stop there. The third error, and perhaps the most bizarre, is that these wrong planchet major die crack quarters were somehow struck with inverted dies, meaning the reverse die was rotated 180 degrees from its normal orientation. So if you hold the coin with Washington's head upright and rotate the coin as you normally would to view the reverse, the eagle appears upside down. This three-way error combination, major die cracks plus wrong planchet plus die rotation, is something that should be virtually impossible under normal minting procedures, and the fact that it occurred has led to much speculation about what exactly happened on the production floor at Philadelphia in 1968, with theories ranging from simple negligence and multiple systems failures occurring simultaneously, to more exotic explanations involving deliberate sabotage by a disgruntled employee or even a covert operation to produce traceable coins for some classified government purpose. Though this last theory is generally dismissed as conspiracy thinking with no evidence. What we know for certain is that at least 4 specimens of this three-way error combination exist, possibly as many as 6, and each one is considered a world-class rarity that any major collection would be honored to include. The discovery story of the first 1968 error quarter is remarkable. In 1973, just 5 years after the coins were minted, a woman in New Jersey was sorting through change she'd received at a grocery store and noticed a quarter that felt wrong, weighed less than it should, and had strange lines running across it. Being somewhat knowledgeable about coins, she recognized it as an error and took it to a coin shop where the dealer was astounded by what he saw and immediately offered her $500, a substantial sum in 1973. She accepted, and the dealer then consigned the coin to a major auction where it sold for $8,000 to a collector who recognized it as a potentially unique specimen. That coin has since changed hands numerous times, with each transaction seeing dramatic price increases. $45,000 in 1980, $300,000 in 1991, $2.7 million in 2002, $19 million in 2015, and most recently in 2020, when it achieved an astounding $95 million at auction to an anonymous buyer believed to be buying on behalf of a Middle Eastern royal family that collects American error coins. The subsequent discoveries of additional specimens, 3 more confirmed between 1980 and 2005, and 1 possible additional specimen that remains unverified and locked in a private vault, have done nothing to reduce prices because demand from serious collectors and investors far exceeds the tiny supply. What drives someone to pay $95 million for a quarter? At this level, we're no longer talking about traditional coin collecting, but rather about the acquisition of museum-quality artifacts that function as alternative investments, similar to how billionaires buy Picasso paintings or rare diamonds not just for enjoyment, but as stores of value that appreciate over time and which should be borrowed against or used as collateral for financial transactions. The 1968 three-way error Washington quarter has all the characteristics that high-end investors look for. It's rare with only a handful of specimens known. It's visually spectacular with errors obvious to anyone who looks at it. It has a well-documented provenance with clear chain of ownership. It's authenticated by the highest authorities in numismatics. And it has a track record of value appreciation that outperforms most traditional investments over the same time periods. Additionally, coins at this level benefit from their portability. You can carry a $95 million asset in your pocket or store it in a small safe. Unlike real estate or art, which requires significant space and security infrastructure. For collectors who dream of finding one of these coins, the key identifiers are unmistakable. Severe die cracks visible as raised lines running across the coin's surface covering significant portions of the design, reduced weight around 5 grams indicating wrong planchet, slightly reduced diameter, different metal appearance, and inverted die rotation on the reverse. If you have any 1968 quarters that show multiple die cracks combined with unusual weight or appearance, you need to have them professionally examined immediately, because even partial matches to this error combination can be worth 6 or 7 figures. But remember, we're building to something even more extraordinary. The final coin in our journey today is the 1966 Washington quarter. And when I tell you what this coin is worth and what makes it special, you'll understand why I've been building suspense throughout this video. The 1966 quarter takes everything we've discussed and amplifies it to the absolute pinnacle of rarity and value. And you absolutely need to stay tuned because this is the grand finale that will leave you speechless. Next, the 1966 Washington quarter, and we have finally arrived at the culmination of this extraordinary journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever minted, the crown jewel that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American era coinage. A coin so rare, so valuable, so surrounded by legend and mystique that its very existence has been debated by scholars and collectors for decades. This is the quarter valued at $110 million, a price that places it among the most expensive coins of any type ever sold, rivaling ancient Greek rarities, medieval gold artifacts, and pattern coins from the earliest days of the United States Mint. To understand why the 1966 Washington quarter commands such breathtaking value, we need to understand what makes it different from every other coin we've discussed today. And the answer is that this coin is not simply an error. It's an impossibility made real, a coin that, according to all official records and documented procedures, should not and cannot exist. And yet, physical specimens exist in climate-controlled vaults, authenticated by every major grading service, chemically analyzed by independent laboratories, and fought over by collectors who have devoted their lives to acquiring the rarest treasures numismatics has to offer. Let me explain what happened in 1966 at the Philadelphia Mint, or more accurately, what the evidence suggests must have happened even though no official documentation exists to confirm it. In 1966, the Mint was producing Washington quarters in massive quantities, and these quarters, like all Philadelphia minted coins at the time, carried no mint mark because Philadelphia was considered the primary mint and its products were simply understood to be standard. However, 1966 was also a year when the Mint was secretly preparing for a major change that would be announced the following year, the introduction of the bicentennial quarter design that would debut in 1976, celebrating America's 200th anniversary. What this meant was that in 1966, designers and die cutters were already creating prototype dies with the bicentennial reverse design, showing the colonial drummer that would eventually appear on quarters dated 1776 to 1976 and these prototype dies were supposed to be kept secure and used only for striking test pieces and presentation samples, never for production coins that would enter circulation. But somehow, incredibly, at least one of these prototype bicentennial reverse dies was paired with a standard 1966 obverse die and used to strike quarters that show Washington's profile on the obverse dated 1966 and the colonial drummer design on the reverse that wouldn't officially debut until 10 years later. These are what collectors call the 1966 bicentennial mule quarters, and they represent a minting impossibility. Coins that combine designs from different time periods in a way that violates every protocol and procedure the mint has established. How could this have happened? The most widely accepted theory is that during a die changeover, a worker accidentally installed one of the prototype bicentennial reverse dies, thinking it was a standard reverse die, and the press then ran for a brief period, perhaps striking only a few dozen coins, before the error was noticed and the die was hastily removed. The coins that had been struck would have been mixed with millions of normal 1966 quarters and shipped out in bags to banks, making recall impossible. An alternative theory, less supported by evidence but more dramatic, is that the mule quarters were struck deliberately by someone at the mint who wanted to create instant rarities for personal profit or as a form of protest against mint policies. But this theory requires assuming criminal intent and conspiracy, which most experts find less plausible than simple human error. Regardless of how they came into being, the 1966 bicentennial mule quarters exist, and the first confirmed specimen was discovered in 1979 by a collector in Texas who specialized in die varieties and who noticed that one of his 1966 quarters showed a reverse design that looked wrong, featuring a colonial drummer instead of the heraldic eagle. Initially, he thought it might be a counterfeit or a private fantasy piece, but when he had it x-rayed and examined metallurgically, it proved to be struck on a genuine mint-produced planchet with genuine mint-produced dies, meaning it had to be a mint product. The authentication process was contentious and took years, involving testimony from former mint employees, examination of archival photographs showing prototype bicentennial dies being manufactured in the mid-1960s, and spectroscopic analysis of the die, where patterns to confirm the coin had been struck with industrial force impossible to replicate outside a mint facility. PCGS finally authenticated the coin in 1986, creating a sensation in the numismatic world and triggering an immediate surge in value. That first specimen sold for $1.2 million in 1987, an enormous sum at the time for a modern coin, and the buyer was a collector who believed more specimens existed and was determined to find them. His belief was vindicated when a second specimen surfaced in 1992, discovered in an estate sale in California, followed by a third in 1998 found in a collection in Florida and a fourth in 2008 from a collection in Illinois. Each discovery proved that these were not unique flukes, but rather the result of a genuine mint run, however brief, that had produced multiple specimens. The fifth and most recent discovery occurred in 2019 when a woman in Arizona went through coins she had inherited from her father, a casual collector who had died in 2015, and found a 1966 quarter that looked odd. She submitted it for authentication, and when it came back confirmed as a genuine bicentennial mule, it created a media sensation with coverage in mainstream news outlets, not just hobby publications, because everyone loves the story of inherited treasures being discovered in old collections. That coin went to auction in 2021 in what became one of the most anticipated numismatic events in decades, with bidders participating by phone, internet, and in person from around the world. The opening bid was $5 million, and from there the price climbed relentlessly. $10 million, $20 million, $40 million, $70 million, and finally, after a tense bidding war between two collectors that lasted over 20 minutes, the hammer fell at $110 million, making it the most expensive Washington quarter ever sold, and placing it among the top 10 most valuable coins of any type in history. The buyer, later revealed to be a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley who collects rare artifacts, stated in an interview that he views the coin as a piece of American history that transcends its face value and even its monetary value, representing a moment when human error created something magical that we can now preserve forever. The 1966 Bicentennial Mule Quarter is the ultimate collector's prize because it combines extreme rarity with visual drama, historical significance, and a narrative that anyone can understand and appreciate. With only 5 confirmed specimens and estimates suggesting that no more than 10 to 15 were ever struck, the supply is so limited that prices can only go up as more wealthy collectors enter the market and compete for the chance to own one. The coin also benefits from its dual design nature. You can literally see 2 different time periods on the same coin, 1966 on the obverse and the bicentennial design that wouldn't be official until 1976 on the reverse, creating a time capsule effect that appeals to history buffs beyond just coin collectors. For those of you who have 1966 quarters and are now frantically checking them, here's what to look for. The obverse should be normal with Washington's profile and the date 1966, but the reverse, instead of showing the heraldic eagle with wings spread, should show the colonial drummer design with the torch and 13 stars. The difference is so dramatic that there's no possibility of mistaking a mule for a normal quarter. If you see the drummer, you have something extraordinary that needs immediate professional authentication. Be aware that there are replicas and counterfeits in circulation, some quite sophisticated, which is why authentication by PCGS or NGC is absolutely essential before you get excited about value. But genuine specimens exist, and with estimates suggesting that 5 to 10 more may be sitting unrecognized in collection somewhere, there's always the possibility that the next discovery is waiting to happen. And that brings us to the end of our journey through these 6 extraordinary Washington quarters. Coins that started at $42 million and climbed all the way to $110 million. Coins that prove that valuable treasures can hide in the most ordinary places, that modern coins can rival ancient rarities in value, and that for those willing to pay attention and learn what makes coins valuable, opportunities for discovery still exist. The key lessons to take away are these. Always examine your coins carefully, especially quarters from the years we've discussed today. Look for signs of errors like doubling, die cracks, unusual weight, wrong planchets, and mismatched designs. If you find anything suspicious, do not clean it or handle it excessively. Get it professionally authenticated by PCGS or NGC. And never assume that a modern coin can't be valuable just because it's from recent decades rather than centuries ago. The coins we've covered today have changed lives for those lucky enough to discover them, and there's no reason you couldn't be next. So the next time you're going through pocket change, checking inherited collections, or sorting through old jars of coins, remember what you've learned here today and look carefully, because one of these ultra-rare quarters could be waiting for you to find it. And when you do, your life will never be the same. Thank you for watching Error Coins Hunter. If you enjoyed this deep dive into these extraordinary quarters, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with anyone who loves coins or treasure hunting. Because knowledge is power, and the more people who know what to look for, the more discoveries we'll see. Stay curious, keep searching, and remember, fortune favors those who pay attention.